Assalamu alaikum everyone. I'm Fahad Asif. I work with Pakistan Stock Exchange and representing Pakistan Stock Exchange, and this is the latest webinar on the ETF that has just been launched by Mahaana Wealth. And joining us today is Mr. Mubashir Zubairi, who is CFA, Chief Investment Officer at Mahaana Wealth. He crafts investment strategies with expertise in portfolio management, private equity, and financial modeling, honed through roles like senior analyst at the Tundra founder AB. Assalamu alaikum, Mubashir. I hope you're doing well today, and over to you.
Walaikum Assalam, Fahad. Thank you for having me. And today we will be talking about our recently launched ETF. And PSX has been a great support in the launch of this new product. And we are happy to introduce these new products in Pakistan. Before I start my presentation, I have a very brief presentation which will be in two parts. First, I would like to talk a bit about Mahaana, what Mahaana is, and then how it kind of correlates to the launch of our ETF. So Mahaana is basically the first digital wealth management company in Pakistan. There are a lot of issues that we talk about when we talk about investment and saving landscape in Pakistan and the low level of penetration. But when we highlight this low level of penetration, we must also talk about the reasons for these low level of, investment accounts and, people not really investing. One of the key reasons that also relates to our investment in or the launch of this project, the Mahaana and the ETF, is basically suboptimal investment products in Pakistan, which kind of do not encourage saving. So in the longer run, we have seen that the active funds or the available investment products are charging exorbitantly high cost in terms of total expense ratios and management fees. And these costs actually eventually are borne by the investors, and then they result in lower investment returns. Over the longer period, we have seen that the active funds have not really outperformed the investment benchmarks over the longer period. So some of our core USPs in this market are basically we provide retail investors easy access to the markets. So the digital onboarding can be done in few minutes, and the investor can actually open their account. And all this is done without any human intervention, without any paperwork, which allows scalability in terms of operations and catering to a large number of investors. Then, because of all this digitization effort, we can ensure lower expense ratios, and lower expense ratios in turn result into higher returns for the investors, and it kind of creates the benefits in the longer run. Because if we just think about it, if you save just 3% every year in terms of management fees or the total expense ratio on one fund, compounded to the 10 years, it will not be 30%, it will be much more in terms of the returns. Similarly, we also have robo advisory, which we will discuss at a later stage, which is one of our core products. Then we talk about investment products that are launched by Mahaana. One is the low risk Mahaana Islamic Cash Fund, which is Islamic money market fund. And the second is the Mahaana Islamic Index ETF, which we will be discussing today. And that is the first broader index ETF in Pakistan, having 30 stocks, 30 Sharia compliant Islamic stocks from 13 sectors. And then we are also going to be launching a retirement fund during this year with our partners IGLI. When we talk about ETFs, let's say, just to give a very brief overview on the ETFs, the ETFs have become like really popular in the recent years. So the first ETF was actually launched in 1993 in the US. And if you see this chart over here, in the last, let's say, 6 years, the ETF market is expected to almost triple. What is an ETF? An ETF is basically with one security, you get an exposure to a basket of shares or basket of securities, could be fixed income as well. So let's say the investor is just buying Mahaana Islamic Index ETF on the stock exchange, and with that index ETF share, just one trade, and the investor gains exposure to 30 underlying securities, and this can be traded directly through any brokerage account. Any brokerage firm does not have to be just a Mahaana user. The second thing, which I will also touch upon later, is that these can be traded anytime during the day. And so let's say during the day, during the market hours, the investor wants to liquidate it, they can just sell it anytime and they can buy it anytime. So the timing of the purchase can be as per the liking of the investor. Uh, why they have become popular is another reason, like I mentioned, because the ETFs are compared to active funds, they are lower cost products, and because they are lower cost products, in the longer run, the cost plays a huge impact on the total return of the investors, because of which the investors are now preferring going into passive investment, into index investing, and the numbers in the ETF market are actually showing that. Uh, the other thing is just a number in terms of the ETF market growth is about 19% in the last few years, and it is expected to continue. In Pakistan, also, I think the ETF were launched sometime around 2019, and since then we have seen a few ETFs, but I think that a lot of the market participants don't understand ETF as a product, and a lot of work has to be done on that. So a basic question that we kind of come across is why ETFs and why not just buy stocks directly? So from an investor point of view, they're just managing a portfolio of, let's say, 30 stocks, or being the case that we have Mahaana Islamic Index ETF that provides exposure to 30 stocks. For an investor to own 30 stocks is not easy. They will have to trade 30 stocks separately. Each trade cost adds to the trading cost. And also, then the investor also has to do a lot of research and technical analysis or just data analytics that takes a lot of time. Then there's also if you're managing a smaller portfolio, maybe like 10 stocks, then the concentration risk is there in terms of direct ownership. And if you're, let's say, 10 stocks, 10% each, the portfolio gets really volatile in terms of higher volatility. But when, let's say, in terms of a diversified portfolio of the ETF, you will have 30 stocks. Let's say oil and gas sector is not doing good on a certain day, but the other, let's say, 23 stocks in the portfolio will somewhat do better, or they might not be as impacted as the oil and gas sector, which will provide which will hedge the volatility in the index. Then we also compare ETFs to mutual funds. Mutual funds, like I said, active stock funds, they have a much higher expense ratio and management fees compared to ETFs. Current average expense ratio and management fees total average about 4.5% for active equity funds. This compares to less than 1% of Mahaana Islamic Index ETF. Now, the 3.5% differential is actually borne by the investor in form of the returns being lesser when compared to the same product. Mutual funds often they also incur distribution fees, front-end loads to the investor, which is charged to the investors. And the point that I highlighted earlier, that ETFs can be traded anytime during the day by the investor, whereas if you're trading an active fund, it will only be done on the day end NAV, or the net asset value, day end price of the stock. So if, let's say, you see the market going down, but you really can't trade until the end of day, and that's where the unit prices or the fund prices are announced. So that is one advantage you get in the ETFs. Just like I mentioned, there is a trading bias for investors. Let's say I buy a stock today and there is a negative news, but because of my investment cost being higher, I might not be quick to trade or book a loss. This can happen with individuals. We've studied in behavioral finance. Same is the case with, let's say, active funds as well. The fund manager bias is there, and it can be, let's say, in concentrated positions, and also impacts, like, let's say, a stock in which there is low liquidity, and the stock or the fund is unable to exit in case of a bad news. So these things are often avoided in the ETFs, and you don't really need to open. So let's say in active stock funds, let one stock fund is performing in year one, the other one is performing in year two. To switch between stock funds, you have to open an account with different asset management companies directly. So you have to basically go from one AMC to another. So you might have to open five different accounts. Whereas in terms of ETFs, you just need to open one brokerage account and you can trade, or you can switch between multiple ETFs with the same account. Now, this is basically about passive investment. And, when we talk about ETFs, right now we have passive investment products, and why passive investing is preferred. So, passive investing has gained a lot of popularity, mainly due to the long-term capital appreciation and also few other benefits, such as the lower cost that I highlighted. Instead of taking exposure in the active funds and just getting maybe barely beating the benchmark, investors now prefer going into passive funds, and they consider the long-term benefits of equity investing. Um, Equities globally serve as an inflation hedge. So let's say you are investing in stocks of Unilever or a consumer portfolio, or you might really, that the companies, whenever the inflation occurs, the companies usually pass on the prices to the end users. And that is one reason inflation is hedged through a portfolio of equities or through ownership in those companies, right? So, like we see in this chart, despite all odds, despite all the negative news in Pakistan, equities have really outperformed even gold and dollar. So, dollar is about just over here, and this is gold, and this is the KC 100 index and KMI 30 index. On an annual basis, if we annualize the impact, it's about 18% annual returns for a period of 15 years, which is quite remarkable when we compare alternatives. So let's say if an individual invested 10,000 rupees 15 years ago, it would be almost 12 times in the Islamic index. And during this period, the investor does not have to actively track their portfolio. They don't have to, trade their portfolio. At times, if you are managing the portfolio yourself, you might want to sell following a negative news, and then you might want to buy following a positive news, and you might, because of the movement in the share prices, then the individuals often feel that they missed the rally, they missed the boat, and to avoid these instances, it's better to invest in the index on a passive basis for the long run. Now we'll talk about Mahaana Islamic Index and what the Mahaana Islamic Index ETF does. Mahaana Islamic Index ETF is basically the only broader index ETF in Pakistan. The index was formed to passively, mimic the broader index performances. As we can see in the testing period, we tested a 39% return for the Mahaana Islamic Index fund, and it provides the investors long-term benefits of equity market exposure at a very lower cost. And the other thing is that within this 30 stocks, the 30 stocks are basically filtered based on the free float market capitalization, the top 30 free float market capitalization stocks, and each which have a minimum liquidity of 10 million rupees on a daily average basis, which kind of ensures that the liquidity is there in each of the 30 stocks which are filtered into the portfolio. These are the sectors that you get an exposure to in the Mahaana Islamic Index ETF, which is about 13 sectors covering power, oil and gas, Islamic banks, technology companies, cements, autos, oil and gas marketing, refineries, textile, pharma, and food segment. Since launch, the fund was launched on March 11, 2024, and it's returned about 9.2% since inception, which has actually beaten the KMI 30 as well in terms of performance. This is just a bit of our investor portal. We will see a lot of questions about Mahaana as well. So this addresses, investors can access the portal, they open accounts in their own names, and they can, based on their goals, they can actually invest. They can also buy equities directly through Mahaana Invest, and they have all the information real time updated in their portfolios. These are some of the three products that we have launched two. We are planning to launch a third one, which is Mahaana Save Plus, which is low risk cash management, Mahaana Invest, which is the equity investment and the long term goal based saving, which is backed by the Mahaana Islamic Index ETF, and then we have the retirement fund that we will be launching during this year. So this was basically a bit about Mahaana and also about the Mahaana Islamic Index ETF. I think we can now take questions if there are any specific questions from the audience.
Okay, Mubashir, shall we move towards the questions?
Yes, please.
Okay, so let's start off with the basic questions first. जिसमें से आप कुछ जवाब देना चाहें आप दे सकते हैं. If you want me to chip in, I can. So सबसे
Sure.
पहले तो ये एक सवाल है कि भाई how many ETFs are at PSX?
इसमें I think इस वक्त we have the 9 ETFs, of which only 2 are Sharia compliant ETFs.
बिल्कुल. And next one is can we modify ETFs? यानी अगर let's say किसी ने अगर MII ETF परचेज किया है और वो चाहते हैं कि भाई उसमें मॉडिफिकेशन कर लें या मल्टीपल ETFs खरीदे हुए हैं, तो क्या ये ऑप्शन होता है इन्वेस्टर के पास?
Investor जो अपनी इन्वेस्टमेंट करते हैं, they can obviously just like they buy multiple stocks, they can buy multiple ETFs. But within an ETF अगर पोर्टफोलियो मॉडिफाई करना चाहें, that's not possible. क्योंकि आपको जो एक ETF होता है वो अपने प्रीसेट कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट्स का एक्सपोजर देगा. लेट्स से महाना इस्लामिक इंडेक्स ETF अगर कोई इन्वेस्टर खरीदता है, then they get exposure to 30 stocks and वो सेम रहेगा for the investment period. If they want to gain exposure to other sectors or to other indexes, तो वो जो है दूसरे ETFs ले सकते हैं.
करेक्ट. इसके अलावा मुझे साहब विल देयर बी रिकॉर्डिंग? ऑफ कोर्स रिकॉर्डिंग इस सेशन की हम आपके साथ सबके साथ शेयर कर देंगे. करंटली फेसबुक के ऊपर भी स्ट्रीम हो रहा है सेशन, वहां पे भी आप देख सकते हैं. वहां से लेटर ऑन रिकॉर्डिंग भी चेक कर सकते हैं, वहां मौजूद रहेगी. अगर कुछ आजाद चाह रहे हैं जो डायरेक्टली वीडियो को देखें, रिकॉर्ड डाउनलोड कर लें अपने पास रिकॉर्डिंग, तो उसका ऑप्शन भी चंद दिन बाद प्रोवाइड कर दिया जाएगा. वो हम अपलोड करके आपके साथ लिंक जो है वो शेयर कर देंगे. नेक्स्ट अप इज हाउ एंड when do we get dividends? Somebody asks, anonymous attendee asks, how and when do we get dividends?
जो ETFs actually pay annual dividends, and this is basically decided based on the gains realized as part of the annual results in the ETF. तो ETF के दो gains होते हैं जो आपको प्राइस में नजर आ रहे होते हैं. एक होती है capital appreciation of the securities that are held by the ETF, and the other is the dividend that is received of the underlying companies. Let's say in the 30 stocks ईफर्ड ने डिविडेंड दिया, जो ईफर्ड का डिविडेंड फंड को जो मिलेगा, दैट इज द गेन ऑफ द इन्वेस्टर्स. अब वो यूजुअली प्रैक्टिस है कि एनुअली डिविडेंड डिस्ट्रीब्यूट करती हैं फंड्स.
बिल्कुल सही है. नेक्स्ट अप इज व्हाट इज द डिफरेंस बिटवीन एन इक्विटी फंड एंड एन ETF? आई थिंक इट्स प्रीटी सेल्फ एक्सप्लेनेटरी, बट फिर भी थोड़ा सा बता दें अगर डेफिनेशन आप.
Equity funds are usually active funds. जो equity funds में मैं थोड़ा सा discuss करा था. These are active funds. These are not really just following a certain benchmark. They could vary in terms of strategy. And there's no fixed strategy as such. Maybe it based on the fund manager's view. Today they could be overweight on certain sectors, and next month they could be overweight or underweight on certain sectors. There is no fixed rule for these funds. And then also because of these overweights and underweights, often they incur higher trading costs, which are passed on to the investors. In terms of investors, the main thing is the cost of these funds. They, like I mentioned, 4.5% total expense ratio is charged to the investors from their return from active funds compared to ETFs, which is around one less than 1% for Mahaana ETF.
अच्छा साकिब साहब and कर्नल शहजाद साहब, you have raised your hands. Kindly आप Q&A section में या messages section में अपना सवाल drop कर दीजिए so you can get the answers to your questions. Meanwhile, जब तक आप अपना सवाल यहाँ पे drop कर रहे हैं, let's just get back to the remaining questions. So another one is, what is the expense ratio and how it is charged to us?
Expense ratio basically includes all the chargeable fees of the fund, including the management fees of the asset manager, which is charged to the investors. And आपका जो daily fund की price आती है, daily net asset value आती है fund की, उसमें आपका expense ratio incorporated होता है. तो let's say अगर आपका day का return 1% है of the fund's investment, and उसका जो डेली का फीस चार्ज हो रही है वो रिड्यूस होकर आपको नेट इंक्रीमेंट होता है वो मिलता है इन्वेस्टर्स को.
Right.
सेम एज डिफरेंस अगर हम उसको एनुअलाइज कर ले तो 30% अगर आपकी इन्वेस्टमेंट से परफॉर्म करा है और 1% का आपका परफॉर्मेंस मैनेजमेंट फीस है, टोटल एक्सपेंस रेशियो है, तो आपको नेट इन्वेस्टर्स को 29% मिल रहा होता है. एंड दिस इज बिकॉज दिस इज अक्रूड ऑन अ डेली बेसिस. तो वो कंटिन्यू करता है, वो एट अ सर्टेन डेट डिडक्ट नहीं होता कि उसकी फीस की कोई सर्टेन डेट.
बिल्कुल ठीक है. अच्छा, another question Mubashir is, how can we buy the how can we buy the MIIETF? Can it be bought online?
Yes, absolutely. इसको MIIETF को buy करने का, if you have a brokerage account, you can actually buy it from any broker on the Pakistan Stock Exchange. And if you don't have the brokerage account, then we have the capability to actually, for our users on the Mahaana portal, they can actually buy through Mahaana Invest, and they can buy the ETF.
Can you please take us through the steps briefly? So people who are wondering if they currently do not have a brokerage account or they want to go through the Mahaana Wealth route, so they can actually opt for
So for Mahaana portal, it's very simple actually. Like I mentioned, the onboarding journey is less than 10 minutes. So the users have to sign up on the portal, and once they get access to the portal, they just have to open their account with their CNIC and with just the CNIC, and answer a few basic questions based on the information required for the account opening. Once that is done, they can actually trade the ETF through the portal.
So, are there any particular set of documents that are required to be uploaded at the time of signing up, or they can be submitted later on? If yes, then would you like to shed light on what documents are required? Perhaps the basic ones that you think are the fundamental
For the
documents that are required.
for the basic for the basic account and for the new investors, we only require the CNIC to open an account. Once the investor actually reaches a certain threshold and they want to invest beyond that level,
Yeah.
then we require additional documents which are actually provided on the portal.
So something
And they can,
similar to Sahulat account.
yes, correct.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I hope that clears the question or any ambiguity if there was any. So this can be done. अच्छा, एक और चीज मुझे उसका second part सवाल का ये था कि can it be bought online? So if you can talk about it a little and tell them.
Online in terms of through your broker, yes, it is possible. If you have a brokerage account, the brokerage app, they actually give access. You just have to enter the symbol, which is MIIETF, and trade at the desired price.
अच्छा वो आई थिंक आई फ्रॉम व्हाट आई माय अंडरस्टैंडिंग और एक्सपीरियंसेस आई थिंक ये शायद इस पर्सपेक्टिव से पूछना चाह रहे होंगे कि क्या हमें उसके लिए जाना पड़ेगा कहीं पे, या क्योंकि बहुत सारे लोग अभी भी ये सोचते हैं क्योंकि ऑनलाइन वाला कॉन्सेप्ट इज द फीचर इज देयर, बट नॉट एवरी ब्रोकरेज हाउस और एवरी कम एएमसी इज ऑफरिंग दैट काइंड ऑफ सर्विस. So a lot of time you have to go to a broker to either open an account, or even at times you have to call or send an email to authorize the broker to मुझे ये वाला फॉर एग्जाम्पल ईटीएफ खरीदना है, ये शेयर खरीदना है, so उस तरह से होता है. तो आई थिंक फ्रॉम दैट परस्पेक्टिव इफ दे आर आस्किंग, सो उसका आंसर भी यही कि दिस इज डन ऑनलाइन, एज इन यू आर नॉट सपोज टू बी एक्चुअली buying a physical share for the starters, and secondly this would be done through online trading platforms. So इसमें कोई और चीज की इन्वॉल्वमेंट एज सच है नहीं, so it is online from what I think it is, right? Next up is how has MIIETF performed since its launch? So ये पूछ रहे हैं कि अभी जितने दिन लॉन्च हुए हैं उसकी परफॉर्मेंस जानना चाहते हैं कि क्या परफॉर्मेंस है. सो वेल आई नो इट्स टू अर्ली फॉर दैट क्वेश्चन टू बी आस्क्ड, बट फिर भी अगर आप इस पर थोड़ी रोशनी डाल दें.
इसमें तो थोड़ा सा मैंने जैसे ब्रीफली हाईलाइट करा, सिंस इंसेप्शन रिटर्न ड्यूरिंग द डे, मैंने थोड़ा लास्ट जो देखा था, इट वाज 9.2% इन मे बी लेट्स 1.5 मंथ, अगर हम देखें 6 वीक्स में.
जी
और this is in line with actually the market movement, or the market is going on an upward trajectory. But it I must also highlight कि जो KMI 30 इंडेक्स है, जो more renowned इंडेक्स है, जो older इंडेक्स,
जी
उसको इसने बीट करा है
जी
ड्यूरिंग दीज डेज.
जी
तो इट इज एक्चुअली वेरी गुड इन्वेस्टमेंट. अगर आपने लॉन्ग टर्म इक्विटी मार्केट को रिटर्न भी चाहिए, थोड़ी सी
जी
आउट परफॉर्मेंस चाहिए, देन यू मस्ट इन्वेस्ट इन MIIETF.
बिल्कुल ठीक है. अच्छा, देयर आर अ कपल ऑफ मोर क्वेश्चंस, लेट मी जस्ट push them. So next question is, अच्छा कर्नल शहजाद साहब आप कुछ पूछना चाह रहे हैं? आई वुड रिक्वेस्ट कि आप काइंडली अपना जो क्वेश्चन है वो Q&A सेक्शन में प्लीज ड्रॉप कीजिए, ताकि हम आपके सवाल का जवाब एड्रेस कर सकें, आपको बता सकें. कमिंग बैक टू द क्वेश्चन, सो इज दिस ETF is formed from some bank, and who is the provider? So well आपने बता ही
और
दिया,
दी
if you would just
मैं क्वेश्चन समझा नहीं. इज इट बैंक बैक्ड,
पूछना चाह
या
रहे हैं कि ऑफर्स दिस ETF किसकी तरफ से है. सो
ये ETF है तो महाना का अपने, इट्स महानाज ओन प्रोडक्ट. एंड इसमें जो मार्केट मेकर है, दैट इज राइट नाउ द ओनली मार्केट मेकर इन PSX जो एक्टिव है, विच कैन ट्रेड सिस्टमेटिकली, जेएस ग्लोबल. एंड इसमें बाकी जो आपका कस्टोडियन है, जिसके पास शेयर्स होते हैं, दैट इज CDC, which is the largest custodian in Pakistan for the fund, and they also actually custodian for the government assets. तो वो
बिल्कुल
in terms of security अगर आप देखना चाहें तो all your assets are held by CDC. In case there is also a very common question which I might take the liberty to answer right now, कि अगर let's say कल को Mahana closes down, so assets का क्या होगा? The assets will continue to be held by CDC. There is a liquidation process of the fund. Let's say the fund can be transferred to CDC, and CDC will actually eventually pay each and every one of the investors as and when they liquidate it. So the
जी
fund does not close, and Mahana itself does not
जी
manage the payments of the fund, rather than they just manage the investments.
जी बिल्कुल. I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of people do think that this capital, these investments directly go to the either to the वो without or to a broker or an AMC इस तरीके से. But it's important that they know कि ये TDC के थ्रू सारा हैंडल होता है, so their assets are actually safe, right? So
Yes.
ये इन्होंने एक सवाल और पूछा है, which is I'm not sure if it is relevant to this, but I'll still share with you. So is Mahana planning to launch any gold based product, commodities से
Uh,
रिलेटेड
ba-
जा रहे हैं?
We are actively actually assessing the need of the different products that the investor require, and it might be in the near future that we consider the launch of this product. Then we are also in launch of new products. We have to look at the infrastructure available in the capital markets for launch of, let's say, a commodity product, or
Right.
so it is definitely something that we consider based on the feedback that we receive from investors.
Right. Fair enough. So another one is tell us a bit about Mahana's mutual fund, Mahaana Islamic Cash Fund, which is MICF.
So Mahaana Islamic Cash Fund is basically a low risk investment product, which is an Islamic money market fund. This fund invests in money market securities, which is government bonds, Islamic government bonds, Islamic corporate sukuks as well, which takes exposure in good companies through their corporate sukuks. And also some of the liquidity is maintained in banks which are double A rated and above. So this fund actually, because it is low risk money market fund, it has somewhat one of the highest returns in the last few months since launch. Actually, Mahaana Islamic Cash Fund has been the best performing Islamic money market fund, and that is primarily because of the low cost and active investment management in that fund. इसका जो अभी जो tentative return and that is around 20-21% based on the current yields. If we look at it from a year to date perspective, the return are around 23%.
बिल्कुल ठीक है. So I think you have answered to the extended question of asked by Mr. Rahman के उसका जो yearly क्या है वो आपने I think बता ही दिया है. ये कह रहे हैं can we invest in MITF using Mahaana portal? I think you have answered to that. I think the answer is yes. How we can do it as an overseas Pakistani? So रोशन एक्विटी के थ्रू अकाउंट खुलवा के आप ईटीएफ के अंदर इन्वेस्टमेंट कर सकते हैं, एक्विटी के अंदर इन्वेस्टमेंट कर सकते हैं. उसके लिए आप अपना आरडीए यानी रोशन डिजिटल अकाउंट खुलवाइए और रोशन एक्विटी के थ्रू आप इन्वेस्टमेंट कर सकते हैं. नेक्स्ट अप इज व्हाट आर द की एडवांटेज ऑफ इन्वेस्टिंग इन ईटीएफ कंपेयर टू ट्रेडिशनल म्यूचुअल फंड्स एंड व्हाई. मुबशिर साहब ये पूछ रहे हैं कि स्टैंडर्ड स्टॉक्स खरीदने की जगह या म्यूचुअल फंड्स खरीदने की जगह यानी म्यूचुअल फंड में इन्वेस्टमेंट करने की जगह भाई ईटीएफ में क्यों इन्वेस्ट करूं मैं, और दूसरा ये कि अगर करूं तो व्हाई शुड आई चूज एमआईआई ईटीएफ ओवर रेस्ट ऑफ द ईटीएफ दैट आर अवेलेबल करंट.
अच्छा, एक तो मैंने बहुत आई थिंक काफी डिटेल में कवर किया व्हाई ईटीएफ्स आर प्रेफर्ड कंपेयर टू एक्टिव स्टॉक फंड्स. उसके मल्टीपल रीजंस होते हैं, बिकॉज एक्टिव ईटीएफ्स, हमने जब भी ईटीएफ लॉन्च करते हैं उसकी एक स्ट्रेटेजी होती है, बेस्ड ऑन अ स्ट्रेटेजी, and based on that strategy उसके past returns होते हैं. In the past we have seen that none of the active funds have outperformed the benchmark indices, be it KSE 100 or KMI 30, over the longer period of investment, let's say 10 years, whereas the investors are bearing higher cost of taking exposure in the market through these funds. तो एक तो आपका फायदा ये होता है कि आपकी लो कॉस्ट ऑफ इन्वेस्टमेंट है, और सेकंड ये है कि आपके रिटर्न्स आर बेटर थ्रू ईटीएफ्स. उसके अलावा लेट्स से आपकी जो कंपनीज में इन्वेस्टमेंट करते हैं, विच इज द टॉप 30 कंपनीज, लेट्स से वी आर इन्वेस्टिंग, तो इसमें आपको फंड मैनेजर बायस नहीं होता. लेट्स से यू if a fund manager is trading or taking speculative exposure which might or might not work in their favor, तो वो एक्सपोजर से बचने के लिए इलिक्विड कंपनी का एक्सपोजर अगर किसी फंड में है और मार्केट अगर अच्छी नहीं होती, तो लेट्स से वो एक्सपोजर अनफेवरेबल हो जाता है, तो उससे बचने के लिए ETF इज द प्रेफर्ड इन्वेस्टमेंट. Why Mahana ETF compared to other ETFs? One reason is that it is the only broader index Sharia compliant ETF. It has 30 stocks. I think no other ETF on the stock exchange is offering such a diverse portfolio, which is, I think, the main reason. And even in terms of ETFs, when we compare, Mahaana Islamic Index ETF has the lowest expense ratio, including management fees. So in the end, the investors are going to benefit. I was looking at a comparison of fund performances during the last 6 weeks since inception of the Mahaana ETF, then the Mahaana Islamic Index ETF has also outperformed the other Islamic ETFs and also the Islamic active funds. So it is only going to benefit the investors if they invest in the ETF.
ठीक है. Please share why it is named Mahana when we receive dividend annually.
Can you repeat, sorry?
In the सवाल है कि why is MII ETF, why is it called Mahana ETF while whereas the dividend is paid annually?
Actually, Mahaana is the brand name. Mahaana was, like I mentioned, this is one of the products that we have launched, and Mahaana is more of a to promote. The purpose of it is to promote or inculcate a monthly savings culture in Pakistan, which is the need of the hour for everyone. If you see
Absolutely.
that people want to, protect themselves from inflation, they want to do retirement saving,
Yeah.
they want to save for their children education. So that is the main purpose of Mahana and why Mahana came to be. ये जो एक्सचेंज ट्रेडेड फंड है उसका मंथली प्रॉफिट से लिंक नहीं है.
बिल्कुल ठीक है. कर्नल शहजाद साहब एक सवाल पूछना चाह रहे हैं कि इंटरिम डिविडेंड जो है उसके बारे में बता दें.
इंटरिम डिविडेंड depends on actually the board and the management. If they deem fit तो पे हो सकता है, but on an annual basis I would suggest कि one annual dividend is for sure. अगर per market performance again realize अच्छे हो जाते हैं, then an interim dividend is also possible.
ठीक है. सो एक और सवाल साकिब साहब का है लेकिन आई थिंक वो आंसर हो ही गया कि कैन वी मेक अ मंथली प्लान लाइक इन्वेस्टिंग मंथली. या एक और सवाल उससे रिलेटेड है कि हाउ हाउ कैन अ सैलरीड पर्सन टेक एडवांटेज ऑफ द महाना ईटीएफ or in fact as any ETF for that matter. So do you think कि कोई कोई इसके लिए पर्टिकुलर स्ट्रेटेजी हो सकती है कि सैलरीड लोग मंथ टू मंथ बेसिस पे अगर इन्वेस्टमेंट करना चाह रहे हैं तो वो क्या कर सकते हैं?
बिल्कुल ऐसे सैलरीड लोग हम तो रेकमेंड, जैसे मैंने आपको बताया कि मंथली सेविंग्स का कॉन्सेप्ट प्रमोट करने के लिए महाना वाज वन ऑफ द की रीजन फॉर महाना वाज
जी.
फॉर्म. वी एक्चुअली रेकमेंड पीपल टू सेव मंथली. आपकी जो भी इनकम हो उसका 10-20% आप अपने जो है बजट करें टू सेव
जी,
फॉर द
बिल्कुल.
लॉन्ग रन, फॉर योर चिल्ड्रन, फॉर योर फ्यूचर. इक्विटी मार्केट्स का जैसे मैंने एक चार्ट दिखाया था जो रिटर्न्स थे अबाउट 18% एनुअली हम देखते हैं कि रिटर्न ओवर द लास्ट 15 ईयर रहा है. एंड तो इसमें ये होता है कि इफ अ पर्सन इज लेट्स से able to save monthly, they can actually go and buy the ETF every month. जो भी आपकी अमाउंट हो आप उससे हर महीने आप ETF ले लें. आप गोल बेस्ड सेविंग करें, आप अपना गोल क्रिएट करें, टारगेट क्रिएट करें, एंड बेस्ड ऑन दैट टारगेट यू कंट्रीब्यूट मंथली and you save a certain amount monthly. You can buy a low risk investment as well and a high risk investment as well based on your risk appetite. अगर आपको शॉर्ट टर्म गोल है, आपको 1 साल बाद पैसे चाहिए, तो एक्विटीज में आप पार्शियली एलोकेट करते हैं, बट यू कैन नॉट गो 100% इन दी एक्विटीज. अगेन इट डिपेंड्स ऑन योर सर्कमस्टांसेस एंड objectives or investment goal. But you should definitely, if you are saving for the longer run, you can continue to buy the ETF monthly. तो आपकी जो कैपिटल एप्रिसिएशन होगी उसमें कंपाउंडिंग इम्पैक्ट भी आ जाएगा उनके रिटर्न्स.
Absolutely true that. What is your outlook for the MITF? What can we expect in the future? आगे के लिए कह रहे हैं कि कह रहे हैं कि क्योंकि वॉलेटाइल है मार्केट और इकोनॉमी, तो उसके हिसाब से आपको क्या लगता है कि MII ETF का क्या फ्यूचर है? बट ऑन दैट, बिफोर यू आंसर टू दैट, आई थिंक इट्स इम्पोर्टेंट दैट वी ऑल नो कि स्टॉक मार्केट का जो फंडामेंटली स्टॉक मार्केट काम ही ऐसे करती है कि शेयर्स की प्राइसेस ऊपर नीचे जाती हैं. उसी वजह से हम जो है उसमें से प्रॉफिट कमाने की हमारे लिए अपॉर्चुनिटीज निकलती हैं. अगर स्टॉक मार्केट मूव ही नहीं करे ऊपर नीचे तो उसमें फिर हम वी आर नॉट टॉकिंग अबाउट फ्रॉम द डिविडेंड एस्पेक्ट बट फ्रॉम द ट्रेडिंग एस्पेक्ट ऑफ थिंग्स कि अगर वो ऊपर नीचे हो ही ना और स्टेबल रहे तो ऑब्वियसली नो वन कैन रियली मेक एनी बेनिफिट्स आउट ऑफ इट. बट इफ यू कैन जस्ट टॉक अ लिटिल बिट अबाउट के क्या आगे के लिए क्या प्लान्स हैं, वेयर डू यू सी MII ETF इन नियर फ्यूचर? ऑब्वियसली उससे आगे का तो ज्यादा नहीं, but what do you think about it?
जी जी। हमने इसको अपने मंथली लेटर में भी हम कवर करते हैं यूजुअली इन टर्म्स ऑफ आवर आउटलुक। मैं उसको थोड़ा सा हाईलाइट कर देता हूँ। द करंट इकोनॉमिक सिचुएशन में वी हैव सीन बिट ऑफ स्टेबिलिटी इन द लास्ट मंथ एंड सो इन्फ्लेशन हैज कम डाउन एज वेल। वी हैव मूव टुवर्ड्स पॉजिटिव रियल रेट्स। कुछ हमारे एक्सटर्नल अकाउंट साइड पे भी इम्प्रूवमेंट हमने देखी है
जी
इन टर्म्स ऑफ करंट अकाउंट बैलेंसेस हो गए,
जी
आपकी रुपी स्टेबिलिटी हो गई। So based on these factors and आपकी जो नई गवर्नमेंट है that they are focusing a lot on tax reforms, privatization, a
या
bit of bilateral support as well. So based on these factors we see कि economic जो एक हमने slowdown देखा था that is behind us and going forward things will improve. जो economic numbers में partially नजर भी आ रही है and going forward the improvement will continue. Based on that, we think कि जो आपकी equity markets हैं, they will perform and they will continue to perform. एक थोड़ा सा market में expectation थी और monetary policy rate cut and so on, वो in our opinion that will be bit delayed maybe to second half 2024. But despite 22% discount rate, we are seeing corporate profitability is growing at a very healthy rate, and rate decline होने के बाद this will improve further. So based on the next few quarters or maybe until FY 2025 and we think the market can continue to perform, and based on that the MIIETF is a good way to take exposure to the Islamic index.
बिल्कुल ठीक है। अच्छा, एक और अनोनिमस अटेंडी पूछ रहे हैं कि वी ओपन अकाउंट सर, वी डू वी ओपन अकाउंट विद सीडीसी और ब्रोकर, व्हिच वन इज बेटर? सो आई थिंक देयर इज सम confusion or ambiguity here. So let me answer to that question real quick. Okay, if you are willing to open an account with the Pakistan Stock Exchange and then buy your ETFs, um, तो उसके लिए आपको यू मस्ट ओपन एन अकाउंट विद द ब्रोकर एंड सीडीसी अकाउंट, आपका सब अकाउंट विल बी ओपन एंड देन यू विल बी डूइंग ऑल ऑफ योर इन्वेस्टमेंट्स। बट इफ यू गो टू द अदर रूट, जो कि मुबशिर साहब ने आपको ये बताया कि आप डायरेक्टली महाना के, अब हम महाना वेल्थ के प्लेटफॉर्म पे खोल रहे हैं, तो वो फिर डेफिनेटली जो है वो दूसरा प्रोसीजर फॉलो होता है।
इवन
अदरवाइज जी
साथ में इसमें एक चीज ऐड करूंगा कि इवन विद महाना आपका जो अकाउंट खुलेगा वो सीडीसी में खुलेगा।
जी जी
दैट्स अ
absolutely।
रिक्वायरमेंट फॉर कस्टडी ऑफ शेयर।
जी हाँ,
तो
आपने अभी काफी
वो एक
डिटेल
हम
में
लोग
उसका
सिक्योर।
जिक्र किया।
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल।
जी बिल्कुल, जी बिल्कुल। Next up would be, so we have got a couple of questions left. So what is the difference between Mahaana ETF? We have, so they are saying what's the difference between different ETFs. So how is it different from, let's say they're saying Mizan ETF, जो कि Sharia compliant है, तो and invest in complete index. Why should we consider Mahaana ETF?
लाइक आई मेंशन बहुत सिंपल वो आपका जो है कंपैरिजन है। वन, आई थिंक मिजान ईटीएफ इज इस्लामिक बट इट हैज अबाउट 12 स्टॉक्स इफ आई एम करेक्ट। और वो स्टॉक्स कॉन्सेंट्रेटेड है। आपका जो रिस्क होता है, जो पोर्टफोलियो रिस्क होता है, वो ज्यादा कॉन्सेंट्रेट हो जाता है इन 12 स्टॉक्स। महाना ईटीएफ में 30 स्टॉक्स हैं। दे गिव यू अ वाइडर एक्सपोजर ऑफ डिफरेंट सेक्टर्स। तो आपके 13 सेक्टर्स का एक्सपोजर आपको मिलता है, विच ऑल्सो इंक्लूड सीमेंट, कंस्ट्रक्शन, फूड फूड एंड पर्सनल केयर हो गया, फार्मास्यूटिकल हो गया, ऑटोमोबाइल्स हो गया। तो अगर आपको वेरिड और डाइवर्सिफाइड एक्सपोजर चाहिए उसके लिए there is no other option than the Mahaana Islamic Index ETF.
अच्छा मोहित साहब, एक सवाल और है जिसके बारे में थोड़ी सी बात हुई है, बट आई थिंक थोड़ा सा और आप बताते हैं। सो आप यूजर आस्क, आप वीवर आस्क दैट tell us more about Mahana Wealth, the company itself. Since they are saying that it is just opened, how do you know it is safe to invest in the products of the Mahana Wealth?
बिल्कुल। अच्छा, महाना वेल्थ इज द फर्स्ट एंड ओनली फॉरेन बैक्ड एसेट मैनेजर इन पाकिस्तान राइट नाउ। we have a track record of more than a decade in Pakistan. We have been investing in Pakistan. Mahana Wealth, अगर उसको थोड़ा सा मैं बैकग्राउंड जाऊं तो it is a venture of Tundra Founder Partners. And Tundra Founder has been one of the most active foreign investor in Pakistan for more than a decade. We have been active in the equity markets of about 15 countries globally. frontier and emerging markets. Pakistan was one of the key markets, and we also had Pakistan dedicated fund, the first globally. No, based on that, we started Mahaana because of the opportunity in Pakistan. It is the first foreign-owned asset management company, and it is backed by international venture capital funds and also local strategic partner, that is Packages Group, which is quite renowned. If we talk about, they also have few listed companies on the stock exchange. Based on, let's say, the question that will still arise will be what happens when Mahaana closes down. इसका मैंने आंसर दिया था थोड़ा पहले, वो
Yes.
यही है कि आपके जो एसेट्स हैं वो ट्रस्टी के पास होते हैं। जो जब भी फंड में आप इन्वेस्टमेंट करते हैं, दे आर ट्रांसफर डायरेक्टली टू द सीडीसी ट्रस्टीज अकाउंट, महाना अकाउंट। तो सीडीसी ट्रस्टी जो है वो कस्टोडियन होता है आपके एसेट्स का, एंड दे आर ऑल्सो द कस्टोडियन फॉर ऑलमोस्ट ऑल ऑफ द फंड्स, इंक्लूडिंग गवर्नमेंट एसेट्स हो गए आपकी, गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटीज हो गई। तो बेस्ड ऑन दैट, सिक्योरिटी इज नॉट एन इशू, दिस योर एसेट्स आर नॉट हेल्ड बाय महाना, only Mahana is managing the investment side of it. The if you invest in Mahana, investment has to come from your account, and the same will be the case when you withdraw from Mahana. The investment will only go into your account. It cannot go to any third party account.
And Mushir, how much amount is required in order to get started with MII ETF? सबसे कम पैसे कितने होने चाहिए अकाउंट खुलवाने के लिए और MII ETF खरीदने
Mahana users can actually start with as little as 500 to 1000 rupees. 500 से भी start कर सकते हैं investment. MIIETF का जो basically investment है, that is based on the minimum lot of 500 shares. तो वो it comes to about 5500 rupees, between 5000 and 6000 based on the price, current price.
जी
तो वो minimum investment होगी उसमें ETF में.
ठीक है, sounds very affordable. Another question is, so again there is a little bit of over here कि do we need to pay again and again, they are basically asking, do we have to pay uh, a fee to the broker on a monthly basis? यानी वो कह रहे हैं कि अगर हमने इन्वेस्टमेंट की भी है या कर रहे हैं हर महीने या नहीं कर रहे हैं, either case do we pay the broker every month?
नहीं, there is no fee as such for the broker or the asset manager that has to be paid. अगर आपने इन्वेस्टमेंट करी है तो broker only charges you a trading commission which is standard globally. Same is the case, अगर आप बाय करेंगे तो आप एक ट्रेडिंग कॉस्ट बेयर करेंगे, अगर आप सेल करेंगे तो आप ट्रेडिंग कॉस्ट या ब्रोकरेज कमिशन बेयर करेंगे।
Absolutely.
अगर आप फंड में इन्वेस्ट करते हैं तो उसकी जो मैंने आपको बताया, उसकी जो टोटल एक्सपेंस रेशियोज होते हैं, मैनेजमेंट को फीस होती है, वो इट इज बीइंग अक्रूड डेली, तो वो आपके प्राइस में डेली रिफ्लेक्ट कर रही होती है। द 9.2% रिटर्न दैट आई मेंशन्ड इज ऑलरेडी इनकॉर्पोरेटिंग दीज एक्सपेंसेस, तो आप इन्वेस्टर को 9.2% रिटर्न नेट मिल रहा है।
Right, right, right. ठीक है, ठीक है. And more about how I think you have discussed it, but they are asking about the taxation that is done, कि taxes किस तरह से इस पे टैक्सिंग होगी, टैक्सेशन होगी, कितना होगा, और दूसरा सवाल ये है कि हाउ इज इट शरिया कंप्लायंट, एज इन वो जानना चाह रहे हैं कि थोड़ा सा इसका बैकग्राउंड या टेक्निकलिटी फ्रॉम द शरिया पर्सपेक्टिव.
बिल्कुल रेलेवेंट क्वेश्चन है। मैं पहले शरिया कंप्लायंस पे आ जाता हूँ, देन आई विल कम टू टैक्सेशन। अच्छा, शरिया कंप्लायंस, लेट्स से अबाउट द ईटीएफ, देयर इज अ शरिया बोर्ड ऑफ महाना इस्लामिक इंडेक्स ईटीएफ व्हिच इंश्योर्स कि सारी जो इन्वेस्टमेंट्स हो रही हैं वो शरिया कंप्लायंट कंपनीज में हो रही हैं। पीएसएक्स ने केएमआई ऑल का इंडेक्स फॉर्म करा था, which is a Sharia compliant index of being traded at the PSX. जो हमारे 30 constituents होते हैं, they are basically the top 30 constituents free float weighted of the KMI all. So that is one check that is there. एक तो महाना का शरिया बोर्ड चेक करता है इन्वेस्टमेंट कंपनीज आर शरिया कंप्लाइंट, और सेकंड चेक ये होता है कि दे आर पार्ट ऑफ केएमआई ऑल, व्हिच इज आल्सो अ चेक बाय पीएसएक्स दैट ऑल दीज कंपनीज आर शरिया कंप्लाइंट। और उसका बेस्ड ऑन डिफरेंट जो शरिया स्कॉलर्स हैं, दे हैव डिवाइज्ड द मैकेनिज्म कि शरिया कंपनीज की क्लासिफिकेशन किस बेसिस पे होती है, किन बैलेंस शीट मैट्रिक्स पे दे क्लासिफाई एज शरिया कंप्लाइंट। Second is being on the taxes. Equity में let's say जो ETF में there's a capital gain tax whenever the investor sells or books a gain on the ETF, that is 15%, and it reduces over the period based on your holding number of your holding years. So I think 6 years बाद जो है आपका tax zero हो जाता है. If you hold on to an ETF, if you buy today and hold on to it for 6 years, the capital gain tax will be zero, and obviously the return will be there as well. उसके अलावा जो आपका डिविडेंड टैक्स है दैट इज आल्सो टैक्स एट 15%, सो व्हाटएवर डिविडेंड दैट कम्स इनटू योर अकाउंट इज टैक्स एट 15%. वो एट सोर्स डिडक्ट होता है.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you very much for taking up the questions and sharing their responses in detail. This is all we have today in terms of the presentation and the information that we had, and we have tried to answer each and every question that arrived through Zoom or other platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, and few other channels. If you have more questions after this webinar, you can email us at info@psx.com.pk. If your questions are directed towards Pakistan Stock Exchange, we will be directly answering those to you. And if you want to ask any questions to Mahaana representatives, then we can forward your questions to them, and they can get back to you on the emails you have provided. Thank you very much for joining, and I hope you all have a good day. And we will catch up with you all in the next one, inshallah. Thank you, Bashir. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Allah
Thank you, Fahad. Thank you for hosting us.